Good copywriting is like a superpower. It can build trust, it can strengthen relationships, and it can sell for you. Today, I have Josh Garofalo from Sway Copy, who will teach us about the strategy behind amazing copywriting that actually converts. Learn how to research, strategize, and plan for copywriting that generates real revenue. So many people make the mistake of thinking that they can do their own copywriting. But by hiring a copywriter trained to convert prospects to leads and leads to sales, you'll get your money's worth 10x, I swear. Join me in welcoming Josh to the show. I'm your host, Sarah Noel Block, and this is Tiny Marketing. Hey Josh, can you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, so my name's Josh Garofalo, or some people say Garofalo. I'll take both.
Good. In the intro, I did the second one.
Yeah, I mean, Janine Garofalo, she kind of hijacked the name. So
that's why I did it that way.
That's where it comes from. Yeah, exactly. So Garofalo's totally fine. I own swaycopy.com. Recently, I've started another little project called categorystory.com, which we might get to during our recording here. Basically, I'm a SaaS consultant and copywriter. I've worked with clients like HubSpot, Unbounce, Wave, Hotjar, a bunch of other companies that you would have heard of, and even more that you've never heard of, but you probably will in the next 2 to 3 years once they get growing. And yeah, I guess recently I've turned my attention, I wouldn't say away from copywriting. It's definitely still the bulk of what I do, but moving sort of upstream a little bit more and looking at positioning, messaging strategy, how to compete against similar competitors and things like that.
Yes, and that's what we'll be talking about today, which I'm super excited about, because that's the part where like the real strategy comes in, and without that, you wouldn't be able to convert the way you do. But before we started recording, you were telling me about a contest you won and how you got into copywriting. Can you just tell that story to the people here?
For sure. So if you are in copywriting at all, you've probably heard of Joanna Weeb from Copy Hacker. She's kind of the original conversion copywriter. So she was doing a contest it was another copywriter site. She was doing a joint contest, and it was, if I remember correctly, like had something to do with about pages, and you had to the best comment, the most thoughtful comment won. And so my comment got picked as the best one, and as a prize, she flew me out to Vegas to see her speak at MicroConf, which is an amazing conference if you've never been.
Hold on, it's called MicroConf?
Yeah, MicroConf.
Okay.
Yeah, like conference, micro conference.
Okay.
So yeah, it's focused on like bootstrapped, self-funded startups, and super practical. So if any of your listeners are in that bootstrapped startup type space, best conference for sure that I've ever been to. Anyways, she flew me out there to hear her talk, and while I was there, I asked her what I should do next, and she said, well, you should probably start your own business, and you should probably do it like now before the grass grows under your feet. You forget about this momentum that you've got right now, and you just go back to working. So yeah, like I said, I started the business like 2 days later. I didn't put a ton of thought into my name like a lot of people do. I just wanted to get going. And yeah, I started on the side while working at a startup. And then once I couldn't do both anymore, and the side business was paying me more than the startup salary, I quit the job, and I've been doing this for about 7 years now.
That's a cool story. I love hearing that. And well, I was telling you that I was building my business on the side for 15 years before I took it full time, because I'm a chicken. And I wish I had the balls like that to just be like, okay, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
It took me a long time. And actually, Andy Crestodina of Orbit Media, he's in Chicago too, like me. And we met up for lunch, and he's the one who convinced me to take it full time. So I had my own little mentor experience that pushed me over the edge.
Yeah, when you have someone that far ahead of you look at you and say, like, now's the time to start it definitely makes it easier. They probably see something in you or in the work that you've done to date that suggests that you will probably have a decent go at this. And it sounds like you have, just like I have.
Yeah. It worked out, thank God. It would have just, wrapped around that story of me being a big freaking chicken if it failed.
Yeah, exactly. That's most people's story. So I'm glad you started.
Yeah. So today you're going to be teaching us about the before, the pre-work, and research and strategy that goes into converting prospects to leads to sales. So bring me to the beginning. Tell me how you prepare when you are writing copy for an email sequence that's meant for sales or a sales page. What do you do first?
Yeah, so maybe I'll start with what I think a lot of copywriters do, because I imagine there'll be some copywriters who are earlier in their careers listening to this, and they might recognize this, and then I'll show them why that's not the right way to do things. So most copywriters, when they get started, and I was no exception, the client says we need a homepage. The client says we need this onboarding sequence. You jump in, you wordsmith, you write that homepage, write that email sequence, get paid, and move on. That's the way a lot of copywriters actually work, especially when they're early in their career and they don't feel like they can speak up. Now, as you progress, what you start to realize is the foundation of good copy is not your ability to come up with interesting or quirky ways of saying things. It's rooted in fundamental research. So, who are the competitors? What makes up this category? Your ideal prospect, who are they? Who else are they considering at the time? Why are they looking for the solution right now? What was that triggering event? Which criteria are they considering, and how do they prioritize that criteria? These are all questions that you actually need answers to if you want to write compelling copy that moves the needle. And so this is what gets into what we were talking about earlier, where, yeah, we can talk a little bit about copywriting, but there's not that much to talk about there. It's going to be more about this research. And the way that I tend to do this research, I roll it out in a few phases. So first phase, and this is how I explain it to clients as well. First phase is reviewing, internal documents, testimonials, market research, sales notes, sales calls, anything that doesn't require me to actually speak to somebody on the team or a customer themselves. And the reason that I do this is that it prepares me for the second phase, which is interviewing staff, especially customer-facing staff. And the way I explain this is, by reviewing these internal documents, by the time I speak to your staff, I'm not wasting their time with stupid questions. I have a pretty good idea of what your product does, who your competitors are, who your ideal customer is, and I can start to get into some of the nitty-gritty. So when I'm interviewing staff, I'm looking at people in sales, customer support, success, and then to a lesser extent product, and then marketing a little bit, although I take everything they say with a grain of salt just because they are so close to the product and the problem. And the reason they're bringing me in most oftentimes is they want an outside perspective, somebody who's got a little bit of distance. So I don't just take what marketing tells me and run with it like I might have when I first got started. And what I'm really trying to get at there is I'm trying to understand their product category, the product itself, and their ideal customer as they understand it today from their perspective. And that gives me a baseline. But again, I'm not just taking what they tell me at face value as the absolute truth. It's just a place to start and a place to prepare me for phase 3, which is actually starting to interact with customers at this point. So just like, reviewing those internal resources prepared me so that I didn't look like an idiot when I spoke to people on their team, speaking to their team prepares me so that I don't look like an idiot when I speak to their customers.
So there's an order.
Exactly. So everyone's pretty happy about this order because nobody wants to have an outside marketer come in and speak to their customers and mess up that relationship. So I go into those customer interviews, or if I'm sending out like a jobs to be done style survey, I go into that with a pretty solid understanding of the product category and customer, at least as far as my client understands it. And that's phase 3 then, is that customer interaction. So surveys, interviews. And this is where I start to find, one, discrepancies between what I was told and what's actually true, which is obviously valuable. That's one of the main reasons people hire me, is to find those discrepancies and do something with them. And then the other benefit that comes from this is from the client side, I'm actually finding the most painful problems that we can actually solve today versus just doing what they told me to do. So, they might come to me saying, "Hey, Josh, we need a homepage." And I'll say, "You might need a homepage, but first I need to go through this research, audit, and discovery phase. And if it turns out you need a homepage and that's the most important thing, great. There's a really good chance I'm going to find some other things that you need and that are probably even more important than your homepage." And so the benefit of the client, obviously, like I said, I'm solving the most important problems, and I'm finding problems they didn't even know they had, but were costing them. And then the benefit to somebody like me or to a copywriter who might be listening is that all of a sudden a homepage project, which wouldn't have served the client very well and would have paid, X dollars to me, has turned into a research, audit, and discovery. And I've identified a whole bunch of other deliverables as well that we should work on together. And I'm able to justify it by pointing back to my research. So I've just, expanded the project scope for myself, but also, and this is important, expanded the amount of value that my client is going to get from working with me.
I really like that. So as far as research, deliverables, and order, you have reading the internal docs first. So you're prepared to talk to the customer-facing staff. And then you interview customer-facing staff. And then at last you start interviewing and surveying customers. And then look for any discrepancies in what their true needs are, what the problems are that client is solving for those customers.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, so all of this is done through reading and interviews. Do you have any tools that you bring in when you're in this phase?
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty basic tools. Like obviously interviewing, I'm doing that on Zoom. I'm recording it. If the interview is of an especially high quality, I'll pay for a human to actually transcribe that for me, which is done at rev.com. If the interview is just kind of so-so, then I'll usually get that transcribed by a tool like Descript.com, which does like AI transcriptions, and they're pretty good, but they'll make some annoying mistakes that you're going to have to go through manually and correct.
I use them for this. And I'm like,
have you?
Yeah.
They're good, but what annoys me so much, and I don't know if they've fixed this at all, is like a company name that isn't like a real word. They will just keep trying different versions of it and get it wrong every single time throughout an entire transcript.
I don't know
so,
if they have fixed
that. that part is super annoying, and they make some other silly mistakes. But for a decent transcript, like, it's okay. For surveying, I still use Typeform, although I think there's an alternative out there. I cannot remember the name right now that I was thinking of trying next time. Just because the pricing for Typeform is annoying. It's monthly. They don't let you do any one-off, like, I need one survey, what's it cost me to run a survey? And for somebody like me who might have a client that I work with for 2 or 3 months, I either have to keep paying for Typeform and because I forget to unsubscribe every single time I need to use it, or I usually end up paying for it. And then let's see, what else do I use? I mean, G Suite, pretty basic tools there. I'm using spreadsheets. Like, the data is not organized. Well, it's organized, but it's in spreadsheets. What else do I use? I'm not like a tool heavy person. A lot of this work that I'm doing behind the scenes is just, it's ugly. And then if you're going to present this, which I didn't get to, but if it's like an optional phase 4 of a project, which is, I've got a lot of insights. I know your customers. I might even know them better than you do. I know your market with this outside perspective. I can either deliver it to you in these spreadsheets, or I can put it into a nice presentation that you can use to feed to your sales team, to your content team, marketing, product, support.
I would honestly pay for that. That's
yeah,
very worth the money.
Exactly. Yeah. So for something like that, I would use something like I think their site is pitch.com. For decks. Aside from that, I'm trying to think if there's anything that I have to use for that process.
Well, yeah, I'm curious. I have one question though.
Sure.
What is the difference between Typeform and like Google Forms?
Typeform is honestly just prettier.
Okay.
It's just, I haven't used Google Forms in a really long time. Yeah. And I haven't used Google Forms in a really long time. So maybe they've caught up and made there's feature parity with type form. I just find it really easy to put together a nice form. Like, it's nice for me, but it's also nice for the user. Like, it looks like something that my client put out. Like, I can make it their brand colors and include a logo, and it looks really nice. So for me, it's really important when I'm working with, a SaaS company that's raised $20 million plus that the survey doesn't look like we couldn't pay $25 a month to to put out a survey. So that's why I use it.
Yeah, I can see that. There isn't too much branding that you could do with Google Forms. It's like a color change. I don't even.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe fonts, but you can't upload fonts. So.
Oh, really? No, yeah.
No.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, that's interesting. So okay. So here I have a question, and
sure.
Formulas and templates. What are your thoughts on those for copywriting?
So are we talking like ADA and PASS and those types of formulas? I mean, they're formulas for a reason. It's because a lot of good copy follows them. And so I don't think they should be disregarded. The problem, I think, is when people don't have a good understanding of when and why you're going to use a particular formula, and they just kind of like, I like PASS, so everything is going to be, problem, agitation, solution, or I like ADA. And if that's the way you're thinking about it, that's not a good way to think about it. But I mean, those structures are there for a reason. Most copy does conform to it in one way or another, and they're a good starting place. So if, I know that the state of awareness or the stage of awareness for my client's customer is generally like problem aware, well, that makes me think PASS, and I'm probably going to start them off with like a problem statement to show them that I understand like where they are right now, and I'm probably going to agitate that problem, and I'm probably going to finish it off with a solution because that's naturally what you would do after you've made them feel their problem in a visceral way. You should at least help them solve it, right? So
right.
I'm all for it. In terms of templates, I don't work with templates usually. Like, if I'm going to be writing a homepage for a client, I don't have like a homepage template that I just start plugging copy into. In fact, I try to dissuade clients from doing any type of design before they think about copy, because you run into this problem where, and now I refuse to deal with it. But back when I first started, I dealt with it because I needed clients. Yes. They would hand me a homepage, and there'd be like this section with like put three points here, and I was like, but based on my research, there's like 6 I should be putting there. And they're like, yeah, but there's place for 3, so make it 3. And so what happens is the design starts to artificially constrain the copy.
Yeah.
And so it's backwards. So what I always do is I start with the copy, and I deliver that in like a lo-fi wireframe. I guess another tool, Balsamic. When we get into the execution phase of things, it's I deliver copy in a lo-fi wireframe. I don't replace a designer or developer, but at least I'm able to start with copy, structure the page around that copy, and hand that off to a capable designer with some guideposts, and usually ends up with a better product that way.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I follow a ton of copywriters. I'm obsessed with copywriting. I feel like it's a superpower, being able to sell through your words. I follow a lot of copywriters. And that's one thing that they talk about all the time, is that you can't have that template or the design first. You need to have the copy first. You do. Yeah.
I mean, sometimes like reality strikes, and you can't wait for all the copy to be done before any design work gets done, because they're, preparing for a conference and that they need to launch this new site for. And if that's the case, you can get into things like brand color. You can do some styling around like elements on a page that you're going to have, like testimonials or product screenshots. You just can't put together like a concrete template that the copywriter has to plug copy into, unless you want to just kind of cut your legs off and ruin the whole project.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what do you think the key is to writing compelling copy that actually converts?
So, I mean, I think I've answered some of this, in that it's definitely in everything that comes before the words. The words part is actually not that hard once you've done that work. In fact, I always know that I haven't done enough research when the word part is really hard. When I'm not sure what to say and how to say it, it means I haven't done enough research yet. And I'm trying to get creative like Mad Men style, which is not the way, that's not the way good copy is actually written. So it's definitely a foundation in that. And then more recently, and this is where we get into this category story topic that I've been talking about lately. Mm-hmm. It's in my space anyways, in SaaS, where it's increasingly crowded. All product categories for the most part are quite crowded with solutions that are quite similar, serving similar customers, and they're, how can I say this? They are communicating their similar product to their similar customers in a very similar way, because they're all going through that same process that I was just telling you about, which is interview your customers, use their words, and then make that your copy. That used to be a differentiator back when I got started in 2016. If you were interviewing customers and incorporating what they say and how they say it into your copy, that made you different and you stood out. Your message was more compelling. Now, this is fairly common practice. And so this results in a bunch of companies sounding the same. So I still think you need to do this, but you can't just go from that research phase to putting the voice of customer onto the page and expect to seem different or better than your competitors. I think you need to also spend quite a bit of time taking a look at your competitors, especially like the incumbent in a space, a category leader, and look for gaps in their messaging, in their positioning, and ideally their product, and address those. So for example, for some concrete examples, because that probably seems a little bit abstract, if you're competing in the email marketing space, you'd want to have a really good idea of what MailChimp does, how they communicate what they do, and who they do it for. And you would want your product and messaging and positioning to be a reaction to that if you wanted to be successful, which is ConvertKit, for example. If you've heard of ConvertKit, if you're a creator or a blogger and you need email marketing, ConvertKit has done a really good job of differentiating themselves from the incumbent, MailChimp, and attracting clients or customers, I should say, that are, creators and bloggers specifically, and repelling everyone else. In the analytics space, you have Fathom Analytics, simple dashboards compared to Google Analytics with a focus on security and privacy. These are things that are the opposite of the incumbent Google Analytics. And so their messaging is not, I should say, the quality of their messaging is not just down to the words they choose or the voice of the customer. It's making sure that they zoom in and really emphasize these key differences from the incumbent. So I guess to summarize, it would be do that research, that voice of customer research, but don't stop there. Now take a look at the category, the people you're competing against, and look for opportunities to differentiate there. Does that make sense? You might need to ask some probing questions because it's a massive topic.
No, that makes a ton of sense to me. It's taking what you already gave us, that foundation, one step further, adding in that competitive analysis, and then really taking a look and seeing what your unique value proposition can be, knowing that this is what theirs is.
Exactly. And I think it's just a natural progression. Like I've been, and a lot of people seem to agree with this, SaaS is just following the progression that all types of product categories follow over time. So for example, I think SaaS, and this might be controversial to some, but I think SaaS is moving towards commodities like toilet paper, toothpaste, makeup, and away from things like rocket ships and like vaccines. Like
I've been reading that a lot on LinkedIn lately. Like Casper, for example, the mattress company, is considering themselves a SaaS.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, and it's not so much that, and that is an example, but what I'm trying to say here is that SaaS is increasingly commoditized. It's not enough to just say, like, you have a problem, here's the solution. That's what a rocket ship is. Like, you want to go to space, here's a rocket ship. You don't need to hire me to sell that rocket ship. If you built it and it can go to space, like, it's going to sell if someone wants to go to space. But with SaaS, it's not enough because, I need email marketing. You do email marketing, but so do these like 500 other people. Why should I choose you? And that's kind of what you run into with toilet paper, toothpaste, makeup. Yeah, they're all doing something very similar, right? And so we need to start applying some of those types of marketing strategies and that way of thinking about marketing and sales that are used in like, consumer packaged goods to SaaS. We're not there yet, but that's the way we're moving. We're moving that way and away from rocket ships.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. There's not just one solution anymore.
There isn't. No, it's very rare. I think in my 7 years, I've worked with maybe one client who was doing something truly proprietary that would not easily be copied. And it was because he was like an MIT PhD in artificial intelligence, and he was making software based on that. So that was not going to be copied, but everybody else, it can be copied.
Yeah, actually, I'm glad you brought up AI. We need to wrap up soon because I like TED Talk rules. Try and keep it at that time limit that people can pay attention. But what is your thought on like the big surge of AI companies in copywriting? How do copywriters and AI merge together? Because I don't think AI can stand alone without you.
Yeah. So far, I should disclose, I've actually worked with a company in copywriting AI. So copy.ai, I did work for them in the past. So that should tell you something. That should tell you that, they're not just hiring their tool to write all their copy is what it is. But what's different is Copy AI is actually honest in that they are on your side and that they don't think these copywriting tools are necessarily meant to replace like top quality copywriters. They see it more as a way to, super low value tasks, use something like copy.ai and just let them hammer it out. But really what they see is AI as a tool that's going to work alongside a professional. And so, I've played with it in the past where, I'm stuck on an idea. I want to get some different angles. I'll put some information into Copy AI. It'll spit out some ideas. I never take them verbatim. Like it's not just copy paste. I throw it into my client's document or anything like that. But it at least gives me a starting place and something to build on. So that, and I think this gets into a much larger conversation, which is AI replacing humans, or is AI going to like augment humans, help us do better work and do work that we enjoy more? And at least in the short term, I think that's where the big opportunity is. It's in making humans better. Long term, who knows? We'll probably all be enslaved to robots, but I think that's still a little ways away.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
But yeah, I completely agree with you where there's a lot of, nerves, stress around the introduction of AI copywriters. And I really think it's just a support of copywriting, helping you get a little bit better, get a little bit faster, but you can't do it without a brain behind it. You can't do it without strategy, without the research. And what is spit out in the end, it's not perfection. It needs a human with the talent.
Yeah, exactly. And I always say, like, I'm not going to say that AI can never replace copywriters. I think that would be naive. But once we get to a point where AI is truly replacing like specialized top end copywriters, it's replacing a lot of other things first. So I think we will see it coming. It's a fairly complex task that we're asking to replace. And so if it's done that, the world has already changed, and we've probably already seen this coming and hopefully adapted before we're obsolete, right? So
yes,
that's the way I see it.
With you. So
what a bleak way to end this.
I know, right? I should have started with that in the beginning.
I know, but yeah. Were you going to ask where you can find me?
Yes, I was.
Yeah.
Are you AI? How did you know?
You never know. But yeah, so on Twitter is probably where I'm most active in terms of social, @SwayCopy. In terms of copywriting work, swaycopy.com. And if this idea of telling a category story, a story that's bigger than your product story, but actually encompasses all the players in your space, I talk about this at categorystory.com. It's a free, currently monthly newsletter. I might up that frequency a little bit more down the road, but right now it's free and monthly, and yeah, people are loving it so far.
Yes, please come back and we could talk all about Category Story because I'm really curious about that. All right,
for sure.
Yeah, so much.
Thank you.
All right, I will talk to you soon.
Perfect. Perfect.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me and Josh. It is now time to take action. Here are your next steps. So 1, read all the documentation about your product or service that you're writing about. 2, interview customer-facing staff. 3, interview and survey actual customers. Start to use the words that they use to describe their problems and your solution. 4, complete a competitive analysis so you can create a unique value proposition that helps you stand out from your competitors. And last, 5, begin writing your copy. And that's all. Join us next time on Tiny Marketing. If you're watching this on video, make sure to follow, like, comment wherever you're watching it. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, please make sure to follow and let me know that you exist out there in the world. All right. Thank you.